Normally they're made from, normally it's they're made from love. Take, relationship, when you have a close relationship with someone, a familiar bond, like a family member that you love, and you have a good relationship, and that'll build a soul connection. That's a natural soul connection. When you drink blood or have illicit sex, it creates a hard soul connection. It would, in like during deliverance, we break ungodly soul connections.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that's breaking. And that's why there's a lot of like incubus and succubus demons, because sex also creates drinking blood are ways to get a soul connection. There's a ratchet. All magic and witchcraft is it's a twist on there's a righteous version of it, and then Satan perverts it. You know, the sex within the marriage bond, righteous, illicit sex, unrighteous. Same, you know, it's on the unrighteous end, but it's just a flip. Righteous, drink Christ's blood. Unrighteous, be a vampire. You know, it all
Oh,
there's a counter. They say every witchcraft thing has a righteous counterpart. Every one of them.
and so along your journey, you realize um, that even on the demonic forces side, there is a lot of order to it. There's order to everything,
100%.
whether righteous or unrighteous.
Yeah. I mean, if you think like, okay, when someone gets the Holy Spirit, speaking in tongues, okay, when divination, channelers let spirits talk out of them. See,
Hmm.
same thing. It just depends on what spirit's talking out the human.
And so, like, so being in this, um, were you looking for a way out, or like what was?
Okay.
Um,
Well, there was, I can't, that kind of rocked along, up and down. Um, there was a point where we both wound up. I know it as possession now, but at the time I didn't. Um, it had been a long time since I had like the blackouts, but I started having them again, and and then I noticed that sister was having them too. But like,
hmm.
and it was weird. It was weird how it happened, because like I knew I was having them, so I was like, okay. I'd been on the computer like looking up. I started looking up stuff medically, like what would cause that. But then when it started happening to her, I was, it, you know, you can fast forward to a lot of that. Um, more demonic encounters. We started fighting. It got really aggressively bad.
Mm.
Aggressively bad. If I wasn't blacked out, she was, you know. And the weird thing that, see, I'm like, this is all in retrospect. At the time, it seems like people are messing with you, because what'll happen is when the demon manifests, you don't remember what you're doing at that time, and they can cut out real quick, so they can jump in, make you do or say something real crazy, and then they jump out, and you have to stop and really think about it to catch that it happened. They do something with your mind, so like you don't register the fact that there's a time gap, unless it's real. Like if they jumped in and it was morning, and then when they popped out it's midnight, you're going to notice that. So they do it quick, you know. So they get the people fighting, and they don't let they, you know they don't let you remember what you said, but then you remember what they said. See, they're already gone. So if it jumped in me, if it jumped in me and just said the crate, it'll they go for it too. You know, they'll just make you say something crazy, and then they pop out, and then all you get is the reaction. It looks to you, it looks like this person. You're like, all you remember is walking in saying hey and giving them a kiss on top of the head, and then the next thing you know they jump up and punch you in the face. Like,
Mm. Mm.
see, but you didn't, you know, you have to
Mhm.
get back and talk with people to figure that stuff out. So like there's a lot of stuff that goes on like that where people are fighting, and like the other person has, you know, and they jump, it was both of us doing it, you know, but you don't, like I said, they just all they do is let you remember what the other person does, and you don't, you would have to, like I say, you would have to talk to that person and then figure it out. But by that time you're not even communicating. It's really insidious how they do it. And I'm
Mm.
talking like I'd seen it for years, like on and off throughout my life. When I would call it pop-ins. Like they would, you know, someone's pupils will dilate, and they'll, you know, then you realize it's something else talking at this person.
Mm.
You know, that kind of had periodically happened throughout my life. So when it started happening like later, it was almost all the time.
And so it kept you guys in a very chaotic state.
Yeah, well, there's because there's no way you can even talk to the person, because the second y'all start really communicating, one of you manifests, and it just, you know,
Mm.
then it's doing the weird speech, and it's just that thing messing with you. So it's pretty frustrating at the least. And I'm still not sure what exactly is going on. You know, like I said, all this is in retrospect and after a lot of you know, demonic spiritual teaching, stuff like that.
And so, would you say that, based on how we talk about order, um, definitely, um, based on what I'm hearing, a lot of legal grounds were
Yeah,
given.
then that seeing that that's what they're doing all through the, yeah, one makes room for another, and that's why people get worse and worse, because you know the first one gets in and then it does its little thing, and then it opens you up to the next one, and then by the time, you know, you by the time you get into all that stuff, like you're fully open. They may not choose to use a vessel, but they're going to open as many up as they can so they can get as much done as what they need to do. I got a couple of I got there was one person that I asked to, when the one in sister was, it was cutting a straight full, and I was like, I knew that I was blacking out, but I didn't know what was going on with her. I mean, I thought, like, I looked up the side effects of poison. I didn't know if we were poisoned. I looked up, I mean, I had searched all the natural stuff, and I was like, okay, let me get a second opinion. So I called this friend over, and I'm like, look, I just want you to walk in and sit down and listen and just see if this is as nuts as I think it is. And so yeah, so friend comes over and it shows out, and you know, it, yeah, I was like, okay, well, I'm taking them home now. So we step out, and friend looks at me and he's like, what was that? And I was like, okay, so, because like they're messing with you the whole time, you know, all they do is mess with you, so you even doubt yourself. um so I was like, so that was weird. He's like, I've never seen anything like that. And I was like, okay. I was like, I don't want to, you know, and I told him, I said, like, I know I'm blacking out, but you know, I said, that's something's going on there. Like, she don't act like that. Oh, yeah, we were pretty much, we were open for anything they wanted to do, you know. And same thing, like, you know, and during my blackouts, the one in me would be tormenting her. So that goes on until it can't no more. Um, like I said, this, and it, you know, the drug use just got. I was still doing a lot of. The drug use got off the chain. Um, during that time period. I mean, I got down to when I left. When I left, I think I weighed 130 something pounds. I was like, you know, I don't know if people would understand it. Anyway, I was very, very, very wore down. I mean,
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Very what?
very wore down.
Worn down. Okay.
yeah, frail, thin, emaciated, uh, drug skinny to the point of, I mean, I'm 6'3" and I weighed 130 pounds. Yeah, so we left. We split at that point, and I went home. And then it even got worse from there. It got way worse from there. Yeah, that's when. So like I'm home. Uh, you know, family's still dysfunctional, but now I'm, and like it's funny because during the, I hadn't actually stopped and looked at myself in the mirror for some reason. Like it just hadn't happened. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm gonna look in the mirror. So I get up and look in the mirror, and I mean, I just busted out crying. Like I said, because I was so controlled. Like it never would. I never saw myself. I never saw myself the whole time. I mean,
Mhm.
I was a mess, and I mean, I it broke me down.
Wow.
But and you know what? No one else said anything about it. Like everyone was out. Like no one said no. They didn't react to me or nothing. They were pretending like everything was normal. But when I saw when I saw my reflection, I bust out crying. I
Wow.
realized I realized at that point just how deep into everything. I knew it was bad, but I didn't know how bad. It was bad, real bad.
Wow. Wow.
From there, um, yeah. So this is kind of where, and it kind of happened simultaneously. Well, another friend and his wife, new wife. He popped up out of nowhere. Hey, dude, you want to hang out? I was like, yeah. So him and his wife come over. We kind of, we would like, it was like every Wednesday. We'd bring a 12 pack and just sit around and talk. Just hang. When this chick came over, when she stepped out of the car, I saw orbs like flash, and I'm looking at them, and I'm like, and she goes, "Oh, I'm sorry," and she said, "You saw my orbs," and I was like, "Yep," you know. So I was like, "Okay." This chick was kind of weird, like
I don't. Sorry. So orbs, like, what do you like? Is it this a spiritual thing or not, or earth?
um, balls of color. They
But
can be light, they can be colors.
like, is this just you seeing this alone? Like, is this like a
Uh, some people see them, and some people don't.
okay? Okay, that's what I'm trying to get to. So it's not like she was wearing orbs like as a
No, no. Um, I've had it happen before, um, but it happened like it. For somehow she projected it, or she projected it, and I saw it,
okay.
and I was like, it was so vivid. I just I shook my head, and she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." So you know, yeah, this chick was weird. So was actually they weren't even married at that time. Actually, they weren't married; they were engaged. So we keep having the get-togethers. And things started, and at first it just she was it would just seem normal. She seemed to know a lot about the occult. She knew a lot about any question I asked her. She knew about it. She could answer all this stuff. She had a lot of knowledge about anything like that. So we of course we got into it, because had a lot of questions about all the stuff's going on. Um, oh man, how do we? This out? Um, Anyway, yeah, it as we continued hanging out, I started noticing different things, more weirder things about her. Um, like it seemed like she could make things happen. You know what I'm saying? Like she could make things happen.
Like out of thin air or something? Like what? Like what do you mean
Yeah,
by
like um,
like pop a bunny out of a hat or something?
no, more like she got she got him dude to hold a cigarette, and she you know she's just smoke some, so he smokes some, and then as he comes down, she does her finger like that, and it just flies out of his hand, and I was like, I couldn't tell if he threw it, and he was like, so he picks it up and did it again, and he's like, stop, she was making it fly out of his hand.
Hmm.
She could just do stuff like that. You know, she had a lot of little what on the surface level seems parlor tricks, but it it wasn't parlor tricks.
Okay, so you're witnessing some type of power, demonic power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like as we hung out and talked more, uh, you know, I don't know if it was like letting me see stuff or if I was just seeing it, but one day, this is when I knew this is this is when I knew something was really up. We were sitting there talking, and her and dude, they had brought a joint and they were smoking it, and I was just sitting there, and I'll look over, and I kid you not, this chick's eyes are red, like not like glowy red, but red, like the vampires that drink blood on Twilight red. The whole color part is red, and I'm just sitting there going, not to say that I'm not on any drugs right now. I'm just looking.
Mm.
She sees me staring. She's like, what's up? And I said, your eyes are red. And she's like, oh, I got some Visine in my purse. And I said, no, no, not the sclera. Like the color part of your eyes are red. She says, you can see that? I said, yep. And she goes, oh. And they just shift back to her normal eye color.
Wow.
Like, and I was like, okay. I thought I was tripping. I was like, can you do that one more time? And and then it just shifts back to red. And I'm like, I'm freaking out on the inside at this point, but I'm like, man, that's cool. That's cool. And
Right.
then they shift back to the normal color, and she's like, and when she turned around, I was like, oh, like Houston, we have a problem. That's the first one. As weird as it is, like all the rest, if that was the moment I realized, like, we have a big problem, like a big problem. It got really convoluted. Um, it got like really demonic. Um, you know, more sex, more drugs, um, bigger power displays, weirder stuff. Like it. I'm not sure. If now this may sound weird to some people, but if I'm not sure if she was like a witch and that was a spirit that was manifesting through her, or if it was a thing wearing a dead body, and like a dead vessel of perfect possession. Because the longer that situation went, and the more I hung out with her, and the more we did all kind of stuff, the more I could see what it really looked like, and the more power it got. Yeah, that stuff got so bad, and it got. Anyways, there was a drastic escalation from that point. Um, it started getting too much to handle, and I pretty much, it got to the point where I was like, I'm either I pretty much was to the point where I was like, this is going to kill me. Um, I knew I was in it. This one was, this was either live or die. Um, because they wouldn't let me talk to nobody. And I mean, who's going to believe that anyway? Who's, oh yeah, this chick's sitting over here with red eyes, and and she can growl and crack people's backs and crack, like I said, stuff's flying around the room. It got like a Hollywood movie. It got like a Hollywood movie. So you know, and honestly, like, I wasn't doing drugs the whole time. When it got really bad, during the times it was really bad, I'd quit. I quit taking drugs because I was like, because early on there was a time where I was like, man, I've dope fried. I've done so much crystal that I've fried my brain. But I had the worst things happened when I was off of it, which is that's, like I said, so I was like, it's not that I've been, I'd be sober for 3 weeks, and it was getting crazier and crazier and crazier. So it wasn't like, it wasn't like I was on so much dope that I was hallucinating. Wasn't the case. So, you know, I was sitting there one night by myself, and I was like, I was like, then I remembered, and I was like, Jesus, it's just like, I was like, oh man, yeah. It's like, it's been, I didn't even know, like, I assumed, so I was like, okay, because I thought for a long time, after the witchcraft, I was like, God's not real, it's just whatever you want to do. But when the evil started, and it got blatantly real, to the point, like this is demonic. I knew it was demonic. It wasn't some spirit or some other weird kind of, people got all these beliefs like that. I was like, okay, this is demonic. And if there's demons, then that means that God's real. Like I said, and then I was like, Jesus. I was like, it's like I was baptized. I was like, I've been to church. But it'd been so long. It's like that started that. Got a bobble. And I was like, I had been I'd been Sunday schooled and churched, in the New Testament, but I was like, I'd never read the Old Testament. So I was like, for giggles, let's get in here, and I want to read it. But before I wanted to read it, so I opened it up, and before I read, I was like, and I prayed. I said, God, if you're real, let me, because I tried to read it before. I tried to read the Old Testament before in high school, and it didn't make any sense. It's like, it made no sense to me. It just kind of popped in my mind. Ask God to let you understand what you're reading, and I prayed that and asked that, and I started reading it, and I could understand it this time. And man, and it just, ew. Yeah, it was blowing up at that point. I was like, the prophets and the demon, all see, I was having that happening in real time. So I totally related to it. I was like, oh my God, and then like all the things that it says, all the Proverbs, the Psalms, all it talks about this, like that's what the whole Old Testament is talking about. It's talking about that. And then, so I'm, then I I start, the whole thing comes down. Start reading the law, because I was like, and I was reading it. I don't know where it talks about that in the Bible. I don't know if it's Old Testament or New Testament, where it talks about a reprobate mind. But I was reading it. I was reading that, and I was reading about the reprobate mind, and I was like, I was sitting there, and I'm like, I have that. I have that, you know? So, I mean, I'm like relating to it. I'm taking it in. Like, it, in the state I was in, it just, I didn't, there was no like debate about stuff, you know. I know there's a spiritual world. I know it's real. I know it's real in a better way than a lot of people. So it's easy for me to read it and just take it. But I realized that I had a reprobate mind. This is kind of wild. So dude's mom is a Christian, but she's a believing Christian. So I wound up going over there. I go over there, and she comes out, and I'm looking over. There's a bit. They live kind of up there. If you don't know, it's up on a hill. It's by the state hospital, but it's an old abandoned lot. It's got an old like outbuilding out there. Well, I'm sitting there and I'm watching these shadow figure things run around and do weird stuff. And I'm sitting there watching them. You know, like at this point, I'm seeing stuff all the time anyway. So I'm just casually watching them. And she walks up and she's like, "Hey, what you doing?" I said, "I'm watching those things run around out there." She's like, and normally people just said something, you know, they would just walk off or look at me weird or whatever. But she's like, "Where?" I said, "Right out there." I said, "There's two in the window there, and one in, there's it's right there in the doorway." So she goes inside and she gets her new cell phone, HD cell phone, and she takes a picture. She goes back in there. You know, I'm sitting there watching. She runs out. She's like, "Jason, come look at this. Come look at this." So I go in there. She took a picture of them, and there was three shadow figures on that picture right where I said they were. She believed this is the first person during this whole experience that believed something I said. Her, you know. Then we got to talking about religion. I told her, I was like, "Man, I'm reading the Old Testament right now," and we got to talking about it. And she was, you know, she's like, "Can I do something for you?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "Can I lay hands on you?" And I didn't even know. I was like, "What's that?" She's, you know, it's like, "I just put my hands on your head and I pray for you." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, do that." So she lays hands on me and prays. And I think that was kind of the start of it. It wasn't, you know, you're not just going to immediately come out of that stuff, but um, over time, you know, my mind did kind of, you know, it did, you know, reading the word, you know, started eating again, you know, started,
So
yes, you know, as you're reading the word, because it convicts you, you know, it tells you, you know, you're like all this stuff you got to do. And like, I just realized, like, you know, you do not drink blood, you know, you don't, you know, man, you start reading the law and you're like, "Oh man, I see it." You know, it just starts becoming real clear. She truly, there's, you know, lukewarm Christians and Christians that just, "Oh yeah, I'm a Christian," and they do whatever they want. And then there's Christians that really believe. She was a really believing Christian. Yeah,
and if we look
she totally laid hands. It like I said, it kind of just dominoed from there.
hmm
You know, got, you know, specific. I mean, there's specifically like a lot more demonic stuff, but I think we've pretty much covered it. It got me going. You know, got me. You know, I can't say I can't. I didn't quit doing dope all the way, but I was down to almost hardly doing any. You know, I started gaining weight again. Um, and I know it's, you know, everyone's been like, maybe people might be like, "Oh, you did dope and read the Bible." Yeah, yes, I did. And I think if you're doing stuff like that, I think you should read the Bible. That's kind of how I look at it. Who needs the word more than people who are lost?
oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You know. But yeah, man. I started praying, repenting, basic. You know, and then you know, just the progression up to basically to present day. Completely lost. I was reprobate, crazy. Uh, it it wasn't hallucinating, like, because it wasn't hallucinating. Like, other people saw this stuff too. Like, people got scratched. Uh, we it started happening in the daytime. Like, people were seeing stuff around me. So like, it got to the point where no one, people just wouldn't even. People were scared. They were scared of me. Um, but like, stuff with, like I said, stuff with, it was happening. Other people saw all this stuff happen. Like, Charlotte had the she had the pictures. Um, So yeah, it was very validated. Like